Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you for your testimony today. I've been trying to listen in via C-SPAN, and I know a lot has been covered, of course, on the issue of overdraft fees and the finding that 80% of overdraft fees are borne by 9% of customers, which shows the impact of these fees on those who can least afford to pay them. So that is why the CFPB developed a rule to address this issue. Senator Booker and I organized a letter in April in support of the CFPB rule. There's also been a lot of misinformation about the CFPB rule from opponents of it. Mr. Rust, if you could just briefly describe what the rule does and what it doesn't do.
So thank you. So one of the things I like about the rule is how it creates multiple structures to fit different types of use cases and fit institutions and the different priorities they might have for their business. So there is the overdraft fee, which they describe as the courtesy overdraft fee, where for a benchmark rate, the institution's allowed to charge. And it's a proposal, so we don't know exactly what the rate will be. There's also an option to create an intentional line of credit, an overdraft line of credit that comes with consumer protections. And so this is really moving in the direction that will be more about financial inclusion, not gotcha, but working together. And then there's a third aspect, which you might call a hybrid debit credit card, that allows a consumer to overspend, but instead of having it be a negative balance, it creates a separate account that has credit. And these are protected by important protections like no fee harvesters, no an ability to repay standard, giving consumers time to repay, so a periodic statement, giving them the ability to choose how they repay their account so that they don't incur another overdraft fee.
I appreciate that because, as I said, and as you know, there's been a lot of misinformation. I think it's a very well-tailored and well-designed proposal. I do want to turn briefly to the issue of junk fees as part of the rental housing market. And the chairman of this committee has put a renewed focus on housing. We're the Banking and Housing and Urban Affairs Committee, and I appreciate that. And we've looked at ways to reduce the costs of housing, including rental housing, in terms of increasing the supply, making sure that we have voucher programs. But one of the other areas where we've seen big increases in the cost of housing is not only rents, but in many of these sort of predatory junk fees. That's the topic of today's discussion. So, Mr. Rust and Mr. Suero, if you could just provide some examples of the most egregious junk fees you've seen in the housing market. And I know some of them surfaced as part of the RealPage lawsuit. Maybe we should start with Mr. Suero or Mr. Rust, either one, whoever wants to go first.
Right, so there are additional costs being applied to home ownership that also raise the cost of housing. One of the things that we're worried about is any situation where you have to pay, and particularly if you have to pay electronically, where the real cost of an ACH might be 4.5 cents, but you have to pay $7 or $10. The CFPB has been working on addressing junk fees in the title insurance market. Title insurance is an interesting market where there are cross-competitive pressures. Loss ratios on title insurance could be between 3% and 5%. That's the amount of the premium paid that leads back to a payment back to the consumer. Most of the fees in title insurance are going to pay the institutions that led that provided the lead generation for that title insurance policy.
Thank you, Mr. Swear.
Yeah, no, I'll just add, in the rental market, things like application fees, late fees on your rent payments, utility fees, administrative fees, right? I guess for, the process of applying and things like this. Those are the most common ones that we see. And again, similar pattern to the banking junk fees, which is low-income people across the board are paying those, and Latinos and people of color are also paying those disproportionately.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your work on this, and to the CFA, thank you and the team there for what you're doing, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.